welcome back to Coding Nomads Tech Talks. My name is Ryan Desmond. I'm a co-founder of Coding Nomads. And with me today is James Uejio. James is a Python software engineer at Carta. He was previously a actual Python instructor at UC Berkeley, and he's also a content creator and video creator for Real Python, which is a friend of ours. Great place to pick up some Python knowledge as well as Coding Nomads. Thanks for joining us today, James.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to talk a little bit about how to use Python and how to use these skills to really expose yourself and create websites and give yourself a brand.
Nice, very cool. So tell me a bit about what we're going to learn today.
Yeah, so today I'm going to be going through basically how to set up your own website using GitHub pages in under hopefully 30 minutes to an hour. I will assume that you don't have too much knowledge we will see some HTML and CSS, and I will just assume I'll try to walk through every single step. This is for people that just might just be getting started with programming, or who have a little bit of experience but want to really build something that they can update and that they can show. And by the end of it, we'll actually have a live URL we can visit, and anyone can visit, and
nice.
You can see real-time edits.
Very cool. Nice. Well, I will let you take it away. I'm looking forward to it. And so we can go ahead and stop our videos and you can share your screen and we can dive right.
All right. Setting up your own website in less than 30 minutes. So just a table of contents. I'll talk sort of about web development, what front end means, what back end means, and what full stack means, just so you have an idea of some of these terms. And I might throw them around and talk about what different languages people use in industry and how to better sort of progress towards web development. And then a little intro in HTML, CSS. This is not going to be like a thorough walkthrough of the syntax. This is just sort of going to expose you all to how to set up a page and how to potentially add some CSS to it.
Nice.
And then the last part is just going to be how to set up using GitHub pages. Cool. So web development. What is web development? Well, it's basically a broad term that describes any task associated with developing websites through the internet. So web developers or web engineers or software engineers that work on websites, they're basically people that work on web development. Why is that important? Well, there are 1.5 billion websites. There's 200 million active websites. And Google, for example, gets billions of searches per day. And I bet you visit tons of websites and you don't even realize. You go to Google, you go to this next website, to this next website. Someone has to be managing all those websites. They're not just automatically created, and someone has to manage, maintain, update, create new content, create new features, and it's usually a pretty large team for a lot of these websites. So that's super important. There's millions of people that work on these billions of websites. Also, many companies rely entirely on websites for traffic and profit. So like some e-commerce websites purely run on the internet, purely have websites or maybe a mobile app. They don't have an in-store location. So they really rely that their website has to be on 100% of the time. It can't break. It can't have bugs. They have to create new features constantly to engage with users. So that's really important. Yeah, and these people need people to build and maintain websites.
Lots of job opportunity.
Yes. This is a growing market. I mean, this number has increased, I don't know, from like 100 million to 200 million and 300, 400 million in the near future. Yes, so front end client development. So when people refer to client, they usually refer to front end. And so that's sort of basically everything that a user sees in a web application. So front-end developers are responsible for the look and feel of the site. So they work on client-side code. That's like the term. We say, okay, there's like a bug on the client side. That means it's really sort of only on the stuff that users see, like the words and the text, or like something that is on the page. So some common front-end languages: HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. There are also a bunch of different frameworks. So frameworks are basically sort of like...
Yeah, frameworks are a tricky one because I've had trouble explaining what is a framework, right? And one way that I try to get at it, and I don't know if I'll do it any justice right now, is that because we've been doing this for so long, right? There's a lot of things that we do over and over again, or there's a lot of very common things that we do. For instance, with JavaScript, a very common thing that we'll do is make a request back to the server side, which we haven't necessarily spoken about here, but the other side, kind of the brain of the application. And since we do that so often, and we handle the response again, and that's kind of a lot of boilerplate code or code that we repeat over and over again. And so over time, people have generally developed these frameworks, which make a lot of these common repeated tasks much simpler, right? And beyond just one single task, a framework can have hundreds of features that allow you to develop, for instance, a complex modern web application a lot easier than it would if you were doing every single thing from scratch.
Yeah, that's a great definition. That totally makes sense. So yeah, common front-end languages, HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Some job titles that might be associated with front-end development would be like front-end developer, web designer, UI, UX. So UI is user interface and UX is user experience. So those are people that care about how users think about the page and work on the page and move different parts and how easy is it to navigate through the page. So that's like some very aesthetic website that sort of has this like two divide. I don't know what website this is, but it's just showing that it really matters what people see, and it's also important to make your website look modern and to look refreshing and different, just to engage with users. Down here is just an example of what some CSS code might look like. Cool, and then back-end server development. This is basically refers to working on the server side of an application and everything that communicates between the database and the browser. So you can think of the database as where the data is being stored, and that's for things that might need to persist across requests or across a user like logging out or closing their browser, or like we also need to access that data from other parts of the app, or like we need to be saved. So that's the database, and backend work usually refers to building anything on the server, building APIs, which are basically ways that the front end can communicate with the server and build connections with the database. Some common backend languages: Java, PHP, Ruby, and Python. And they are sort of focused on site responsiveness and speed. So it's really important to think about how data is being stored, how to request, or rather how to get that data efficiently and bring it to the client. Some job titles: backend engineer, data engineer. Cool, full stack development. So full stack development is working on both the front end and back end. So companies might want to hire full stack software engineers because they are flexible and can build end to end. So end to end means from front end, from basically what the user sees all the way to the database. Full stack engineers can sort of touch any part of that, but they might not be as specialized in any part of the stack. So that can also come at downsides. Some larger companies might want specialized people who can do one part of the stack really well, and they don't really need someone who can do all of it.
A good maybe analogy here would be bikes or bicycles, right? There's like your very fancy carbon fiber road bikes, that are designed to do those, Tour de France. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you've got those burly downhill mountain bikes with, 180 centimeters of suspension and stuff. Those are both special, those are specialized bike. It specializes as a brand, but those are specialized bikes. Whereas you could get something that's right in the middle, right? Which has, it's a little more designed to go on the road, but it also still has kind of off-road tires and a little bit of suspension, right? And it's going to be able to do all of it, but maybe not ride, quite as well as that fancy road bike, or quite as well as that super fancy mountain bike in either of those.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. And yeah, my day-to-day is full stack development. I really enjoy doing a little bit of everything, but I have to admit I'm not really that specialized on any of it. So
yeah, for instance, it's some people are just really, really good at design. They've got that eye for design, they've got an eye for angles and colors, and they really enjoy spending hours just making something visually perfect, right? Whereas myself, I could kind of care less about that. I like looking at it, but I'm not, I'm not good at developing it, and I'm much more focused on like the data engineering, data storage, data structure, data querying side of things. And oftentimes that's why you see multiple developers on a team, because everybody has their kind of strong suits, and when you put them all together, you can get a great product. But the holy grail is that super talented full stack developer that can just do it all.
Yeah. Yeah. So this diagram sort of shows like they're linked, and someone can do both. Someone could just focus, as Ryan was saying, just on the database, and then someone could just be quiet on the server, and someone could do just purely CSS, which is just the sort of colors and I mean, it's more than just colors, but for people who aren't super familiar, just that aspect. Perfect. So I'm just going to quickly share HTML and CSS. A great example of HTML CSS is actually, let's just use this Google Slides window. And if you right click, oops, I need to go out here and inspect, you can actually see the source code that generates this page. Not all of it. This is just the front end or client side code. And Google probably hides some of the stuff because they obviously don't want people knowing all their secrets. But the web browser cannot possibly render this page without displaying, like that's one aspect of web development, is the code is just publicly available right here. So for example, you can just click this button, select an element, you can just go here, and you can see the div, which is just this area that is responsible for here. You could actually just go in to it here, see the text motion, and you can actually just edit it. So instead, just say hello. And it changes the page. This doesn't change it for everyone, because then that would allow hackers to mess with websites. This is a good way for, if you're exploring a website, to sort of see, hey, what code is responsible for this text? You just hover, it goes here, you can see hello, and you can just change it. So that's pretty cool when developing or when trying to get inspired by other websites, to sort of see, okay, how are they building this? How are they building this? You can see also the CSS. So this is the styles. CSS is cascading style sheets, I believe. And you can change, yeah, thanks. And you can change some of these colors. So we could change the color of that text. Let's go back to that text. I don't know where you went. I deleted it, maybe. Well, let's pick something else. You can do background color. I just know this is black. So this styling is probably shared between the two, but you can just change it. And this is actually really, really useful. I use it all the time to play around with this before changing the code. Because sometimes if you're changing just like one little thing on the actual code, it takes a little while for your website to restart. So sometimes I do it directly on this is the Chrome Developer Console tool, and then copy it back to the code that I'm working on.
Definitely. You're when you're working with, especially with CSS styles, you're going to make a lot quicker progress if you're testing all of your styles here in the inspector and the developer tools. And then once you figure out, okay, this is exactly where I want this and how I want this and the color, then you just set that in the code and it's done.
Yeah, it's these are the bread and butter here. There's also some other tabs. While I'm here, I might as well just show. There's the console. This is where you can type like JavaScript. So like console.log is some JavaScript. This is basically a print statement in Python. Undefined is sort of like none. I don't want to say it's the same. There's a bunch of nuances there, but this is useful to type JavaScript. And then we can go to the network. The network's pretty cool. If you refresh, you can see all the requests that this page is making to the server. These are actually a bunch of server. Some of them are, this looks like it's getting some data. One of these is a picture I saw. So it has to load this little picture and some of these other icons. So there's a ton of different tools here.
For SEO, Google dings you a lot for having too many network requests on a website, and they're not shy about it themselves. It's a lot of requests.
Yeah. I didn't know that. I don't know anything about SEO. So SEO is search engine optimization, and usually there's someone who takes care of just that. It's like
Yeah.
a growth engineer. But yeah, that's something I'm not very familiar with. Awesome. So that's all I'm really going to talk about HTML and CSS. Like that, this is sort of creates like a template for what's displayed, and like text, for example, just looks like, that's not a good example. Maybe like this. Text might just look like a div with some text in it. For the example later on, I'm just going to have a div with some text in it. So that we're just going to keep it simple. And then CSS is over here, and it might change the color or the text size or some of the height and width of these little boxes. Awesome. So now I'm moving on to GitHub Pages, which is a website. I mean, they do the definition the best. Websites for you and your projects. It's hosted on GitHub. So GitHub is basically a place where you can share your code and put your code. And you can also, it's sort of like they developed Git, which is like this version management control. And it's sort of like helping save your progress for files, as well as like go back in time to see what versions, as well as add new files to your project and manage all that. And there's a bunch of different tools. Git could be like a whole like 5-hour video.
We've actually got a course in development right now that's just on Git and GitHub. And a quick, I think actually a quick correction there. Git was developed by Linus Torvald, the creator of Linux, because he was tired of SVN, Subversion, which was the former version control system that everybody used. And so he developed Git, and then GitHub, I think, is just a private company that I'm not sure how much he's involved with it. So Git is just an application that runs on our computers and tracks every single change that we make to a given directory that we set Git up on. And then GitHub is a place where we can share our code on a shared repository with teammates, coworkers. And it's also just the world of open source code. There's millions and millions of repositories on there that other people have written that you can leverage in your applications, and they're all covered by various different types of licenses, like whether or not you're allowed to take somebody else's code and include it in a closed source application, meaning an application that people do not have access to the source code. Many licenses say you can use this, but the project you use it in also has to be open source, which is pretty cool. It perpetuates this culture of open source in a big way. And pages.github.com, you can basically push your web page code to GitHub, and GitHub will host it as a website, which is super cool. I've actually never personally used it, so I'm quite interested in this demo here.
Yeah, thank you for the explanation and correction. Yeah, the open source aspect of GitHub is super important. I totally skipped over that, and my bad about I don't know the historical things for.
Oh, it's only it's because I've been teaching people how to code now for so many years. I've picked up all these little factoids about things like that, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
No worries.
Awesome. So yes, GitHub Pages is basically to get your code hosted on GitHub's websites for free. So GitHub is free. You can create your account for free. Basically, you create your account. Just go to github.com and create your account. I have an account. I need to hide this.
You can drag it around.
Oh, nice. I just hit it, so it's fine.
Okay, cool.
So I already have an account. This is just like a demo account. It's not the one I actually use because I have my own personal website hosted on GitHub Pages, so I can't really mess with that. But this is just an account I made. Go to create repository. It has to be basically the repo name has to be your username. And let me just double check. .github.io. Cool. There's no description. Public means anyone can see it, so I'm going to make it public. A README is basically like when someone visits your repo, they can see the text there. I might as well add it.
Quick question. For repository name, you said it has to be your GitHub username .github.io, and that's just if you're planning to host this on Pages, right?
Yes.
GitHub Pages. Okay, because normally, just so everybody knows, with GitHub, the repository name for any standard application that you're just pushing up to GitHub for practice and to add to your portfolio, the repository name can be anything. But if you plan to host it on GitHub Pages, then it actually has to have your username.github.io.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they gave a suggestion here, just whatever this is. But yeah. Cool. So we create the repo. And then this is what the interface looks like. This is the README. There's a whole bunch of stuff here I'm not going to go into, but really the important thing is git clone here. So you just copy this URL. So let's open terminal. And I'm already in this CodingNomads folder. And then you should have git installed. Mac or OS X, I believe, comes with git installed. Some other operating systems might not. So you can just look at GitHub as a website of how to install Git and everything like that. But if Git type version doesn't error, it says something, that means you have Git installed. So you can do git clone. I'm actually going to make the text a little bigger. Oh, there we go. Oops. Copy this. Awesome. So ls, we see that this is here. If you cd into here, there's just the README because that was automatically created. I'm going to open this in VS Code. You see a README. I'm going to create a new file. Just call it index.html, which is sort of a standard, or actually, this has to be named index.html because GitHub Pages will pick up that as the HTML code to render on the main site. So let's save it.
It's the default kind of homepage or landing page for this website is index.html.
Yep, exactly.
Cool.
So div, and then let's type hello. Save it. We have to go to terminal. Instead of going through the git commands, I'm going to actually just copy and paste from this tutorial because this is sort of assuming you might not have too much knowledge with Git, and I don't want to like go through every single command. But here, to push the changes, we just copy this. So once you've made that change and you saved it, I can see, oops, I have to actually be in the folder. I can see that it's here. Just copy, git add all, git commit, git push -u, origin master.
And I can do a really, really quick summary there. So with Git, after we edit some files, we do git add, and that adds those edited files to what we call the staging area. And James here just used git add -- all because we just have one file. And, you could say git add index.html. Then we say git commit -m, and that means message. And then in quotes is the message that we're giving to this commit. Commits in Git are basically moments in time that we can always step back to. So let's say for some reason I need to step back to exactly the way the code was last Thursday. I'll go look for a commit that I made last Thursday, and I can check out that commit as the code was at that point in time. It's also the way that we collaborate with our peers, because we can have multiple people all working on the same code base. And in order for you to push your code up to a master, to the shared repository, you've got to commit everything, and your peers have to commit everything. And then if there's a conflict between, let's say you and somebody else both edit the same line, it'll actually tell you there's a conflict in this commit, and it'll make you resolve it. That's something that you can dig into a bit later. But it works very, very well. And then finally, git push -u, origin master. That means I want to push my code up to do me a quick favor and type git remote -v. I'm going to push my code up to a remote repository, which I've nicknamed origin, which is the default nickname. And we just say origin so that we don't have to type out that whole URL, https://github.com, Uejio, etc. And when the -u, just so you guys know, makes the origin and master, which is the branch, the default. So next time, all you have to say is git push rather than git push origin master. So a quick little git in 60 seconds there.
Awesome. Thank you for that explanation. Yeah, that was great. The commit sort of being a moment in time, and not like a way to think about it. And that's actually great because it takes a couple seconds for GitHub to pick up the changes, push it to the URL. So now it should be done because we talked for a little bit. So let's go to. that's actually, it just did it. I thought it wouldn't do it for a second. I thought it would say usually like, oh, you have to wait some time. Or it wouldn't say you have to wait, but it would just error. But there it is, our div with hello. And Ryan, if you want to go to your page, like just so people don't think this is just like my local URL, you can visit it. Anyone can visit it in the world and see this.
I'm doing it.
Yeah, perfect.
Hello. Yep, I got it.
Awesome. So let's do one more edit just to add some sort of some style to it. So as we were talking about, we're inspecting because I don't know what styling I want to do. I'm just going to play around here and see what happens. So let's do color. There's actually a bunch already defined in CSS, which is cool. Let's do floral white. That's probably the worst color to pick. Let's do tomato. And let's change this to... Awesome. So obviously when I refresh, or actually not obviously, I shouldn't say, because this is actually pretty, like you sometimes I get mistaken where I edit this and I think it's going to persist when I refresh, and then it's all erased because this loads the code from the actual repository, which we go here, we refresh, we see it's here. So that's why it didn't change. But now let's say we want to actually do that. We go to VS Code. Let's type. I am going to actually define style, and then let's see what I want to do here.
Maybe give the div an ID or a class.
Yeah, that's a good idea. This is really bad, but it's just for an example.
No, it's fun.
I think it's this. And then color is going to be... and this is actually great because I'm sort of unsure. Usually, like this is already built in the repo. I haven't actually had to build style like on the same page. You can open up in your Finder and just open this up. So double clicking this page will open up a local version of what the page is doing. And clearly the coloring didn't work. I am not 100% sure.
Is it CS is not my strong suit, but is it the dot? Is dot for
class?
Or maybe you have to wrap the whole thing in some HTML tags. HTML up at the top and bottom. I would put the opening HTML tag above the style tag.
Just see. Oops. So I think the issue was that we needed a hashtag here because that's for ID. The dot is for class. Just mix that up. So now we refresh and it's here. And then we'll go back to terminal, do git add -all, do another commit, except in this case, we'll say maybe change text to tomato. And git push, which is, as Ryan was saying, now the same as this command. And we go here, it pushed correctly. We refresh this. Now we have all this code. Go here, takes a little while, but in a couple seconds, it will be updated.
And just, while we're waiting, regarding the class and ID on that CSS and HTML. So in HTML, we can, cascading style sheets of CSS came around because everybody was writing lots and lots of styling on every div. Because you can say div style equal, right? That's called inline CSS. And that gets really verbose and burdensome. And so what they developed once upon a time was this idea where a div in HTML can either have an ID or a class or both. And a class is something that multiple divs will share. Like, let's say that the class would have, we could call it class red background, right? And so any div that we can make as many divs as we want, and on that div we can say div class equal red background. And then up in the CSS, which is oftentimes either up at the top of the file like we've done it here, or in a separate file and we link it in, we can make a style that will be dot red background. And then inside that style, we'll just say background color equal red, or background color colon red. The difference between that and a div ID is that an ID specifies a specific div, right? So you can't, technically I think you can, but it's not right, it's incorrect, and lots of sites will have problems with it, or lots of server sides will have problems with it. But you can't have more than one div on a given page with the same ID. So a class is a way to change and or affect multiple divs the same way, and an ID is I want to grab this specific div and I want to change that specific div's background color or text color to this, to blue, let's say. So the class selector in CSS is dot name, and the ID selector is hashtag name or ID. Yeah.
Yep. Something like this.
Exactly.
Yeah, great explanation. We can refresh this local version. You can see it by seeing the path here, that it still worked with changing it to a class.
Nice.
Cool. So that's all I had. There are just a couple resources that I guess we'll link in the description or include, but basically sort of some resources to getting started with HTML, CSS. This should probably link to, actually, let's just get rid of this resource thing, because I know you're making a GitHub tutorial, so I'll leave it on this. But here, pop again. So yeah, that's all I had. It took about 30 minutes, and you can set up your own live website, and if anyone in the world can see it, you can add images, add some fancy animations, really go all out on it. I've seen some personal websites that are just mind-blowing. Mine's is really simple, but it's a great way to show your friends as well as recruiters like what you're capable of and what projects you've worked on, and a little bit about yourself.
Nice. Well, thank you, James. One question that I had is, I wonder if I'm sure that there's, and I'm actually going to Google this real quick, is GitHub pages example website, for instance. And there's actually a link here, github.com/collection/github-pages-examples.
Yeah.
I
think these are well, some of these, like this one, is an actual website, but some of these, like Jekyll and Bootstrap, are like templates to create your own website.
Okay.
But yeah. Also, here's an example one. Square.github.io. But yeah, Ryan, you also mentioned before, like offline, that the CodingNomads
So if you go to, for instance, government.github.com. Oh yeah, we did the stay-at-home mentorship. Government.github.com. So, and you can change .com to .io. This is actually the government. This is their GitHub pages. There's a little redirect in there which takes you to .com. But this is all hosted using GitHub pages.
Wow.
And we also did, yeah, the stay-at-home mentorship, which is CodingNomads.github.io/stay-at-home-mentorship. Stay-at-home-mentorship.
Oh, dash.
/index.html.
This?
Yeah.
Oh, I have it here. Nice.
So this is also hosted on GitHub pages. And this was a cool program that we've been running for people who lost work due to COVID-19. We had a number of fantastic mentors that signed up to share some of their skills, James being one of them. Thank you again for that, James. And yeah, just a couple different examples of what you can do here. And this one is actually using if you right click and inspect, this is actually it's a very simple site. It's got some styling, and it's because it uses, go in the head, open up the head tag. Font awesome, Cloudflare, page
Kit free.
fonts, Google. Martin, who developed this, he's using there's all these cool CSS libraries that are all over. that are all over the web that you can pull down into your applications and very quickly use them to, like if you go into index.html at the top, he's pulling in style sheet, must be page clip, must be coming from page clip.
Yeah.
Pageclip.css, and because so this is a CSS
Bulma.
style
I think this is what.
or Bulma. That's what it is, Bulma. So this is all this CSS that other people wrote, but then you can just use it. So for instance, down on line 25, you can see section, class, hero, is success, is bold. Those are styles that somebody else wrote that since Martin pulled that style sheet down into this HTML page, and that style sheet is publicly available, Bulma, he can then just use those styles. So he didn't actually have to, like if you go back to the actual web page, all this, all this green, all this kind of what's bold and underlined, all that kind of stuff. We just leveraged pre-existing CSS that other people had. So Martin was able to pull this together very, very fast, right? And by using pre-existing CSS and by hosting it on GitHub pages, it took, maybe a couple of hours for him to make this a live site, which is quite cool.
Yeah, I think that's super impressive, and it's not that just Martin is like, I mean, he's really smart and awesome, but it's not like he is the only one who can do this. Like anyone can. Right.
And all those little icons and stuff, for instance, those are all just icons, like the little home and the computer and stuff. Those are all just publicly available icons too, that he just, so like if you right click and inspect any one of those.
Yeah.
That
I think this is just actually what do you call it,
an emoji.
Yeah, an emoji that you can just stick into text.
Nice.
Yeah, but other icons, all like these ones, social media icons.
Right. Nice. Well, thank you very much, James. I appreciate you taking the time and sharing this with us. It's the neat takeaway here is that it doesn't take a computer science degree and a bunch of servers and all this crazy technical knowledge in order to be able to launch your own website and make it available to the world this afternoon, right? And you can have a lot of fun with it too. Like you can go explore website templates or HTML and CSS examples, all over the internet. We have all these kind of the great thing about software development and web development is that everybody documents and shares their struggles and helps each other online. I always joke that probably a quarter of the internet is dedicated just to software developers kind of helping each other and or bickering with each other on some forum. But you can very, very simply go find a nice HTML and CSS example on the internet. You can create that GitHub repository. You can give it the right name, .github.io, and then boom, you've got whatever your GitHub username is. So like mine's rdesmond, it would be rdesmond.github.io. And I can have a really cool website available this afternoon. And, let's say that you've got a job interview coming up or you're trying to build your portfolio or something. You can go look for example portfolio site HTML, right? I'm sure there's hundreds of them out there. You can bring that onto your computer, play around with it in VS Code, just running it on your local machine. You can, personalize it. If you've got a job, if you're trying to apply for a job tomorrow and you need a portfolio site beyond GitHub, you could make one this afternoon, relatively simply. So it's really neat.
Yeah. And I appreciate you so much for having me on. And I'm just always excited to get more people to build their own websites and to learn a little bit about web development. And I think that when I was recruiting and looking for jobs, like a bunch of recruiters were like, yeah, hey, I checked out your personal website. Like, I think that's really cool. Like I have some of my music on there and some other stuff. And it just shows like a little bit of part of me that might not be on my resume or might not be available.
Yeah, you can have a little more fun with a portfolio site than a resume for sure.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, James. Well, thank you so much for your time. Anything else you wanted to mention before we sign off?
I think one thing that I forgot to mention is that you can actually buy different domains.
Right.
So like if you don't want it to be URL or username.github.io, you can buy for pretty affordable. I think mine's is off Namecheap. I got it when I had like a student discount for like $5 a year. Just my first and last name.com. And so I've had that for 4 or 5 years now, and that's a little bit easier for people to navigate to.
Right.
And GitHub actually has instructions for how to link GitHub pages to a actual domain.
Nice. Cool.
All right.
Perfect. That's a perfect way to tie that up. Yeah. Thank you very much, James. Have a great day, and we'll chat real soon.
Thank you so much. You too.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please let us know by liking and subscribing. If there's another topic that you'd like to learn more about, leave us a comment. We would love to hear from you. And if you want to become a coding pro, visit our website at CodingNomads.co. See you next time.